Okay, Kelly, we're live.
I'd like to call this council and committee meeting to order, and I'd like to acknowledge that the land upon which we're collectively meeting this evening for this meeting is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Mississauga of the New Credit, and the Anishinaabe people, many of whom continue to occupy this part of our province. Madam Clerk, the roll call.
All members of our council are present, Your Worship, with the exception of Councillor Lubberts.
Thank you. There is an addendum. There was some missing attachments to report PDS 54-2020 that's now been circulated, and that information is available to members of council as part of the addendum. I have a few announcements this evening, and I want to start with yesterday's official opening of the E.J. Freeland Community Center by the Boys and Girls Club, which coincidentally was celebrating its 60th anniversary in Niagara, and it has 18 years of service in Fort Erie. The task force members are to be thanked and appreciated for the role that they played stepping forward when the Y determined that it was going to close our facility. So I personally want to thank the members of the task force, each of whom contacted the town virtually immediately upon notification of the Y's plans and worked diligently with town staff, the board of the Boys and Girls Club, and our council, and to ensure that the programming and the activities continued at the facility. Those individuals are Bev Arbor, Joan Christensen, Glenn Finbow, Mark Griffiths, Kazi Maroof, Stu McLeod, Terrell Lee McLean, Ted Ogilvie, Rebecca Parton, Karen Vandermeulen, Nick Dubanow, Kim Zanko, Tom Cookett, Janine Tesmer, and I was on the task force myself. The facility, it looks fantastic inside. I don't know if any of you have had an opportunity to go. The ceremony yesterday was by invitation. Public health guidelines and protocols were followed, but the equipment looks fantastic. It's all of the equipment that we received in the transfer from the Y. It's been cleaned up. It was apparently well maintained while it was in the possession of the Y. The facility itself looks fantastic. They're doing some work on the pool and contemplating opening up the slide. They've got a lot of activity going on. They've got a lot of adult programming, and word that I've heard in the community has been very positive, and I'm hoping that all of you had heard the same thing. So congratulations to the Boys and Girls Club. I did mention yesterday, and I want to reiterate that this whole thing wouldn't have occurred but the efforts of two individuals who spent a lot of time figuring out how this could happen. And I want to thank personally Tom Cookett and Joanne Turner from the Boys and Girls Club, because without their efforts, we would be in a different spot, I'm quite confident. Second thing I want to mention is that I received notification, Councillor McDermott had passed on word from Doug Martin, that Gur Fretz, a former mayor of the town of Fort Erie and a longtime member of parliament for this area, passed away this week. He was the mayor in 1977 and 78, and then successfully ran for parliament in 1979 and served, I believe, until 1993 when he retired. Wonderful individual. I don't think there's anyone that ever met him that didn't like him. And conversely, I think he liked everybody, and he certainly loved life. He was a wonderful individual, and it's a sad loss for his family and for our community. Third thing I wanted to mention, and I've alerted members of council, is that the town of Fort Erie received high acclaim today when the 2020 Niagara Region Design Awards were announced. The town of Fort Erie won the grand prize for its work on the waterfront strategy, which highlights the beauty and access to our 40+ kilometers of water along Lake Erie and the Niagara River, not to mention the many creeks that we have in our community. Fort Erie also won the Outstanding Achievement Award for Landscape Design for the work at the Bay Beach Park, which included the beach, the playground, etc. So I want to congratulate everyone on staff who worked on those projects because they certainly speak well of the town of Fort Erie. I want to thank the consultants and the contractors, and in particular, town council, which supported these initiatives throughout the years. Next is, as you know, 2 days from now is Remembrance Day. And yesterday, Sunday, the Ridgeway branch of the Legion held a small ceremony in Stevensville. Councillor Noyes was able to take my spot because at the same time, the Boys and Girls Club were doing their ceremony. Wednesday, the Ridgeway Legion is holding another ceremony. I believe it's by invitation only. It's going to be physical distancing. It's going to be outside. So those of you who can't attend, I would ask everyone in the community to stop 11 o'clock on November the 11th. Think about the sacrifices made by the men and women who lost limbs, life, families as a result of the Second World War, the First World War, and all the conflicts that Canada has been engaged in since our birth. And actually, prior to our birth, if we could get the federal government to recognize the Ridgeway Nine. And then finally, I feel compelled to say a few words about COVID-19, simply because the numbers have been spiraling in Fort Erie over the past 3 weeks. The largest number of infections has been experienced at Gilmore Lodge. The latest information available to me was that 19 residents and 16 staff were infected and 6 deaths occurred. Those were residents. And while those who passed away were near the end of their lives, the reality is that they have been taken ahead of time from their families. And so their families have lost that additional time with their family members. And that's always a terrible tragedy and terribly regrettable. So I'd like all of us to observe a moment of silence for those residents of Gilmore Lodge who passed away during this past 2.5 weeks. I want to say that we've been working with the region, trying to get information, trying to get more data with respect to infections and how the virus is spreading in Niagara. We've had some success in getting information. There's still a lot of data that doesn't really provide us with information. For example, it's hard to pin down unless contact tracing is very reliable where some of these things are coming from. But one thing seems clear, and that is that the virus was introduced to Gilmore Lodge by someone who came in from outside. And that could have been a professional caregiver, it could have been a family caregiver, or it could have been a worker who had been infected in the community. Fort Erie, anybody who's looking at the public health website can see that Fort Erie is a hot spot and has been for the last couple of weeks. Cases are arising primarily from community contact, except for those that have occurred in the institutions. The data does suggest that those in the age range 20 to 39 are most likely to gather in excessive numbers and fudge on physical distancing. I don't believe anyone intends to infect another with COVID-19, but that is the result if we are not vigilant and careful. I don't intend to generalize these comments or point a finger at anyone. What I do want to do is reinforce the need for all of us to follow the public health guidelines and protocols. So once again, I urge everyone in Fort Erie to wash your hands, maintain physical distance when you're out, wear a mask, don't gather in large groups, limit your travel, and stay at home if you're not feeling well. If Fort Erie, Niagara, Ontario cannot get this virus under control, we all risk further reductions in what we can do, where we can go, and what we can, who we can see. So I know that no one wants that to occur, so let's all try harder. Those are the announcements. That takes us to declarations of pecuniary interest. And Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I have 2 this evening. The first one is for PDS 50-2020. That's a proposed draft plan of vacant land condominium and zoning bylaw amendment for 397 Garrison Road, Ashton Homes Western Limited, as I live in a subdivision by Ashton Homes Western Limited that has not yet been transferred to the municipality. And I have a similar declaration for the public meeting. 6B on the agenda. Same reason, I live in a subdivision developed by Ashton Homes.
Thank you. Are there any other declarations this evening? If not, there are some upcoming public meetings. There's a zoning bylaw amendment, which was adjourned from August the 31st, 2020, that will take place on Monday, November the 16th at 6 p.m. The report with respect to that will be available November the 12th. It's the same evening that there will be a housekeeping amendment to the town's zoning bylaw. Again, November 16th, report available November the 12th. And those meetings are both Zoom and they both take place at 6 o'clock. We also have upcoming budget meetings. I won't go through them, but I can tell you that they start on Wednesday, November the 18th, 2020 at 6 p.m. And again, that will be a Zoom meeting. The agenda provides the details with respect to the others. And Madam Clerk, unless you require me to go through all of those meetings, I'm going to leave it at that. Okay. So this evening, we do have 3 public meetings. As soon as I find my instructions. These public meetings are all electronic. Individuals that wish to participate can participate by Zoom, and these are being live streamed over YouTube and also recorded for the public viewing on the town's website following the meeting. For those who wish to participate, when you do get into the meeting, you might want to put your view on gallery. You can do that by clicking either the top left on an iPad or the top right, I think on a laptop, maybe some other location if it's a telephone that you're using. Everyone needs to be mindful of the fact that there is background noise when these meetings are taking place. So I would ask everyone who's not participating in the actual discussion at the time to mute their device. And again, there's a microphone icon that indicates whether you're muted or unmuted. And beside that, regardless of your device, there's also a camera which indicates whether you are active or not active in terms of view by others participating in the meeting. These will be public meetings under the Planning Act. And so there's a process with respect to each of those. Members of council have been provided with any comments that were received prior to this meeting and that were not included in the information report that's part of our agenda. If you are wishing to participate in the meeting as someone who wishes to address council, I would ask you to raise your virtual hand. You can do that by going to the participants box on your device, bottom of the page, almost in the middle if you're using a laptop, top right corner if you're using an iPad. Once you have raised your hand, you will be admitted at the appropriate time by a member of staff, and your microphone will be activated by that member of staff. Up until then, even if you're trying, you're not going to be able to speak so that we can hear you, but you will after your microphone is activated. If you are participating by phone and you wish to raise your hand, press *9 and you will be unmuted by staff. The order of the meeting is typically that a member of staff provides background information to council. Then if there's any, and councillors can ask any questions they might have at that time. Then if the proponent for the amendment wishes to address council, the proponent may, or the agent of the proponent. And then I will ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the application. And once we're done with that, I will ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak in opposition or ask questions with respect to the application. So we're going to start, and as we're going along, I will be asking Aaron Butler if there is anyone waiting in the waiting room to participate in the meeting. And my understanding is that there may be occasion when the clerk may read into the record any notification that's been received from someone who is unable to attend. So, Madam Clerk, if we get to that stage and I'm blowing past you, please alert me to that. Okay, so the first public meeting is with respect to the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for 2776 Stevensville Road, owner Mike and Mary Ellen Grummett. And Ms. Dewaria, do you have this?
Yes, Your Worship.
And I would ask you to proceed.
So I would be sharing my screen now. An application for a combined official plan and zoning bylaw amendment has been submitted by Mike Grummett Jr., who represents Mike and Mary Ellen Grummett, owner of the subject property known as 2776 Stevensville Road. The purpose of the application is to permit the placement of shipping containers and construction of an 892.2 square meter industrial building on the easterly portion of the subject lands. Notification for tonight's public meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act by placing a notice in October 8, 2020 edition of Fort Erie Post newspaper. In addition, property owners within 120 meters were mailed a notice of complete application and public meeting the same date. This is an aerial photograph of the subject lands as well as the surrounding neighborhood. The subject lands are located on the east side of Stevensville Road, north of Eagle Street in the Stevensville neighborhood. This slide shows the site plan for the subject lands. The subject lands known as 2776 Stevensville Road currently contains Bertie Tire Store. Tim Hortons is located to the north. Minor Brother Country Living Store and Bell Canada building is located to the south. The trucking operation and other industrial operations are located to the west, and Stevensville Garden Center, Commercial Plaza, and an agricultural use is located to the west. This slide shows the official plan designation for the subject property. The subject lands are designated commercial on Schedule A of Town's official plan. Stevensville secondary plan designate the subject lands as Gateway Highway Commercial. This slide shows the current zoning of the property. The subject lands are currently zoned Highway Commercial Zone in part and Environmental Conservation Zone in part. The Environmental Conservation Zone is only located on a sliver of the property along the north property line. This slide shows the proposed development that consists of a 892.2 square meters of an industrial building. The applicant is also proposing to maintain the existing building located along the south property line. The site will continue to be accessed via Stevensville Road, and the applicant is providing adequate parking for the proposed use. And lastly, no changes are being proposed to the commercial building located along the front portion of the property, and which is commercial Bertie Tire building. The applicant is is also requesting to amend the official plan by redesignating the easterly portion of the property to industrial. The industrial designation will allow the construction of the new industrial building for storing and repairing tires. Lastly, the applicant is proposing to maintain the commercial designation on the front portion of the property located along Stevensville. This slide shows the requested zoning changes. The applicant is requesting to rezone the easterly portion to an site-specific industrial zone to permit the construction of the industrial building and storage of shipping containers. In addition, the applicant is also requesting to eliminate the landscaping strip, which is required between a commercial zone and an industrial zone. And those are the site-specific zoning regulation the applicant is requesting. Also, the applicant has requested a consent application for the Committee of Adjustment. The applicant is proposing to sever a portion of the abutting northerly property, which is also owned by the applicant, and merge the severed portion to the subject parcel. The applicant is not proposing any development on the severed portions, and any future development on the subject property will be subject to site plan control. And this application would be heard by the Committee of Adjustment on November 19th. This slide shows the Zoom meeting that was held for the subject lands. It was held on September 24th, 2020. The meeting was attended by staff, applicant, and one area resident. The area resident attended the meeting to obtain more information about the proposal, but did not have any objection to the proposed development. This slide shows some pictures of the subject lands. This is looking at the subject lands from Stevensville Road, looking north on Stevensville Road, looking south on Stevensville Road. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dilwaria. Do any members of council have any questions? My only question, Ms. Dilwaria, is and this isn't really relevant to this public meeting because you mentioned a potential severance of the lands to the north. That looked like from one of your other maps, that is land that has some type of environmental restrictions?
Yes, Your Worship, that portion of that severed property would have EC overlay on that. But as of now, the applicant is not proposing any development. But in future, when they would come in for a development, the EC overlay would have to be removed.
Okay, and that would be a process in itself.
That's correct.
Thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on behalf of the proponents of the application? Mr. Butler, do you know?
Yes, I'll bring in the agent right now, who's the applicant. Mr. Grummett's on his way in now.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Grummett.
Good evening, how are you?
Great. You're Mr. Grummett Jr.
Yes. I feel Ms. Delvaria has covered everything perfectly. I really don't have anything to add to that tonight.
Okay. Do any members of council have any questions of Mr. Grummett? If not, then we'll move to, thank you very much, Mr. Grummett. We'll move to anyone who wishes to speak during the public meeting in favor of the application other than the applicant.
So if there's anyone in the attendee area that wishes to speak in favor of the application, now would be your time to raise your virtual hand. I'm seeing none, Your Worship.
All right, so then we'll go to anyone who wishes to speak in opposition or ask any questions of council with respect to the application.
I'm seeing none, Your Worship.
Thank you. Then I'm going to declare this public meeting closed, and we're going to move to the second public meeting, which is the proposed draft plan of vacant land condominium and zoning bylaw amendment for 397 Garrison Road.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to share my screen again. An application for a draft plan of vacant land condominium and a zoning bylaw amendment has been submitted by William Highcoop of Upper Canada Consultants, who represents Ashton Homes Western Limited, owner of the subject property known as 397 Garrison Road. The purpose of the application is to develop the subject property for 24-unit townhouse development. Notification for tonight's public meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act by placing a notice in October 8, 2020 edition of the Fort Erie Post newspaper. In addition, property owners within 120 meters were mailed a notice of complete application and public meeting on the same date. This is an aerial photograph of the subject land and the surrounding neighborhood. The subject lands are located on the south side of Garrison Road in Garrison neighborhood. This slide shows the current location of the property. The subject lands known as 397 Garrison Road are currently vacant. Garrison Road and Commercial Plaza is located to the north. Single detached dwelling, Peace Bridge Phase 1 is located to the south. Garrison Grill and an assisted living facility is located to the east, and a commercial plaza is located to the west. This slide shows a current official plan designation for the subject property. The subject lands are designated urban residential in Schedule A of Town's official plan. The urban residential designation has a full range of dwelling types, including townhouse dwellings as proposed. The lands are currently zoned site-specific residential 1 multiple RM1 376 zone in accordance to the zoning bylaw 12990 as amended by bylaw 102/2007. The site-specific bylaw recognizes the reduced lot frontage for the parcel. This slide shows a proposed development that consists of 24-unit townhouse development that would have frontage on Garrison Road. The draft plan of vacant land condominium will facilitate the sale of townhouse dwelling units that will be built on them. The condominium development includes 24-unit townhouse, a private road, and 16 visitor parking spaces. The applicant is also proposing to provide a pedestrian connectivity between Peace Ridge Phase 1 and Phase 3. This slide shows the requested zoning changes. The applicant is requesting to rezone the lands to a new site-specific residential multiple zone. The site-specific regulations are requested for a reduction in interior side yard width only for Unit 1 from 1.5 meters to 1.2 meters. For Block E, which consists of units from 21 to 24, the applicant is requesting to reduce the privacy yard from 4.5 meters to 3.58. And for the site as a whole, the applicant is requesting a reduction in the landscaped area from 50% to 44%. This slide shows the public comments that were brought up at the open house meeting and that was held on October 8th. The meeting was attended by staff, applicant, and one of the public members who attended the meeting on behalf of the landowner to the east. The resident requested information regarding the servicing of the subject land and also inquired about the possibility of shared driveway access between the two property. Regarding the servicing of the property, the applicant's agent mentioned that land will be serviced via Peace Bridge Phase 1. And regarding the shared access, the applicant agent mentioned that his client was not interested in pursuing the shared access regulation. These are some of the pictures that are taken of the subject property. This is looking at the subject property from Garrison Road, looking north on Garrison Road, looking east on Garrison Road, and looking west on Garrison Road. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dilwaria. Do any members of council have any questions? Councillor Noyes.
Yes, I'm wondering about the access, the long driveway. Are they considering if it's going to be like a median in between or something different? I'm just concerned about the if a fire service or an emergency vehicle, there's no other road going into this, from what I can see.
Ms. Dilwaria.
Through your worship, I'm not aware that a median is proposed between the driveway, but regarding the fire access, this issue was raised by our fire department as well because it's a long driveway. And so they had requested that the units, because some of the units would be far away from the fire hydrants. So the fire department has requested that some private fire hydrants be installed on the property. And also the units which are away from 90 meters from the main access would have to have sprinklers installed in those units.
Thank you. That was my question. Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, there's no other point of access or egress to this site, is there, Ms. Dilwaria?
That's correct, Your Worship. This is just one access, which is off Garrison Road.
Right. And I know in the past when we've had situations of this nature where we've got a cul-de-sac with only one point of access, we have been concerned about whether or what would happen if that point of access was blocked, so that it's all well and good to have sprinklers, but if there's a fire or if there's an emergency, if that access is blocked, how does emergency vehicle get in? Has that been discussed?
Your Worship, we haven't discussed. I mean, the only concern that was raised was about the fire department, and we thought that we would address that through installing of sprinklers. But in case of medical emergency, that option, we can look into it further.
I think we should, because I think it could be any number of potential emergencies rather than just fire. Any other members of council have any questions of Ms. Dilwaria? If not, then Mr. Butler, is there someone who wishes to speak on behalf of the proponent of the application?
There is, Your Worship. I'm going to bring in William Highcoop from Upper Canada Consultants. And as Mr. Highcoop is coming in, I'm going to share my screen as I have a presentation from Mr. Highcoop that he sent ahead of time.
Thanks, Aaron. If you're able to put the PowerPoint up, great. Thanks, Your Worship and members of council. As mentioned, my name is William Highcoop. I'm a planner with Upper Canada Consultants, and I'm the agent representing Ashton Homes for the proposed development applications. As you know, before you are applications for a zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of condominium to facilitate 24 townhouse dwelling units. Slide. The subject lands before us tonight are highlighted in red and are known municipally as 397 Garrison Road and are located on the south side of Garrison Road, with both commercial and residential uses surrounding the subject site. The land is 0.91 hectares in size. The existing parcel fabric was created through Peace Bridge Village Phase 1, which is now under construction, and that is south of the subject site. The Phase 2 lands, which received draft approval for a plan of subdivision, is located southeast of the subject site. The owner, along with their consultant team, including Upper Canada, is actively finalizing details to clear conditions of approval and looking forward to finalizing and looking at construction in the near future for that component of it. So naturally, therefore, we're looking to move forward with the necessary municipal approvals for the next phase. Slide. Anamika did a great job explaining the official plan designation, which is urban residential, and the existing zoning bylaw. So one of the things I wanted to point out was that site-specific designation that was put through Phase 1. One of the big differences at this point in time is we've actually developed specific townhouse units and formalized a site plan drawing. At the time when Peace Bridge Village Phase 1 was done quite some time ago, we didn't have those details. So that's the reason why we're back here tonight. Slide. As I mentioned, the proposed development consists of 24 block townhouse dwellings on an internal private roadway that connects to Garrison Road. The dwellings consist of a variety of townhouse dwelling units, including bungalows, lofts, and two-story dwellings, ranging in size from 1,200 square feet to 2,000 square feet, depending on an interior, exterior unit, and what block they might be. Each unit includes a parking space in the garage and in the driveway. In addition to this, there are 16 visitor parking spaces proposed along the entrance. An internal sidewalk has been provided, creating an important pedestrian connection from Phase 1 through the development to Garrison Road. So that same pedestrian connection is the link for the underground services, sanitary and storm, that are coming from Phase 1. On the bottom of the screen, you can see a proposed elevation of one of the townhouse blocks. Typically, the end units are the ones that will be the bungalow lots. Slide. So just to explain the zoning request a little bit more, the first provision is an adjustment for the interior side yard for Unit 1. So really the intent of that provision is to provide a bump out for the kitchen window. It allows that we have a nice window on that exterior side to let in some light and really makes the kitchen quite a bit nicer. So under the Ontario Building Code, if you have 4 feet or 1.2 meters or greater, you can still achieve 7% glazing on that sidewall. So we certainly have that opportunity. The next second provision we're requesting for Block E, you can see how the depth of the units, they're quite a bit smaller, this block. And one of the things we felt strongly about was providing a parking space in the driveway as well as the garage. So our request here is really for a portion of the units. It's really to allow us to push that garage back farther to that west property line. And then the remaining balance of the units still are able to meet that minimum privacy area requirement. And lastly, the minimum landscaped area. When we're looking at the site overall, and it's been a little part of the discussion already, is the longer entrance. So that's one of the things from a landscaped area perspective, having that driveway on the way in with the parking spaces is the reason for that reduction. We could meet it if we were to drop the number of parking spaces, but as this is a private road development, we felt it was important to include that visitor parking. Slide. So here you can see the draft plan of vacant land condo for the townhouse units. You can see the condo unit lines surrounding the proposed dwellings. That's just the type of condominium that we have here. The proposal will ultimately, if approved, would lead to the creation of a condo corporation. That condo corporation provides for a high level of property maintenance and includes services such as snow plowing, snow removal, yard maintenance, grass cutting, some of those usual amenities. Slide. So I showed them a little bit earlier, but here you can see them a little bit bigger. The proposed elevations for the townhouse dwellings, including bungalow lofts and two-story towns. They will include a variety of brick materials and colors, specifically a brick masonry skirt with more traditional brick through the mid part of the dwelling, and then some board and batten up on the second story dormers and bump outs. So it'll provide for a good variation and a good unit design. Slide. Just to sum up the applications, proposed 24 townhouse dwelling units, connections vehicular and pedestrian to the existing subdivision and to Garrison Road out front, a compatible built form, permits desirable dwellings varying in sizes with adequate parking, and there are sufficient municipal services available to service the subject site. That concludes my presentation. I'm certainly here to answer any questions council may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hycoop. Do any members of council have any questions? Well, Mr. Hycoop, what is the width of the access point on Garrison Road? I see you're providing for a 6-meter wide roadway. What's the actual width of the parcel at Garrison Road?
Yes, the width of the parcel at Garrison Road is approximately 20 meters. So one of the things that we did early on through this process was to consult with Canadian Niagara Power. One of the things that they identified to us that a large transformer would be required at the entrance to the site. So that's certainly something that we took into consideration when looking at that entranceway to make sure that we had enough room for the sidewalk connection, for some landscaping, and for that transformer. So typically, for private road developments, we meet the fire radius and the garbage truck radius requirements, which is to provide that 6-meter entrance. One of the things that I felt strongly about on this project was the landscaping on either side of the driveway, specifically abutting the two existing commercial operations. I'm not sure if you've driven past the site recently, but there are some garbage bins on either side of the entrance. So we felt strongly about providing a fence and landscaping on either side of that entrance to make sure that there was no negative impact felt from that.
It looks like if you take into account the drive and then you go to the area around units 12, 17, et cetera, it looks like we're talking about 100, 130, 150 meters. And I'm wondering what the likelihood is that particularly elderly people are going to be parking in any of these parking spots in the middle of the winter when the weather's not good and walking to visit a friend. Has that been considered?
Well, I think yes, it has. I think one of the important things here to consider is the condo corporation and the landscaping and property maintenance that is included. Usually in most of the sites that I work on, a property manager will come in and do the snow removal, do the necessary salting on the sidewalks. So that's something that we push for the developer to do. to make sure we have addressed those kind of things.
Right, but it's not likely they're going to be providing a trolley service for some of these parking spots. So I just want to get back to the issue of the access and the egress. If there's an emergency in any of these units at the west end, I guess the south end of the property, and that access point is blocked, what's the plan for getting that individual out or getting to the property to protect it in the event of fire or some other emergency?
Well, that's a very good point. At this point, it's pretty obvious that if that entrance was to be blocked, there would be issues with that. Now, certainly, the width of the laneway or the private roadway would be 6 meters, which typically allows for two-way traffic. One of the other points that is important to point out that this isn't a public road. It is a private property. I know that doesn't necessarily answer your question, but we have considered that. We've had a discussion with planning staff about providing sprinklers beyond the 90-meter limit and approaching the existing Delta Bingo facility about the likelihood of a secondary access. We haven't progressed very far in those discussions to date. And I think one of the important things to point out is that we have not yet submitted a site plan application. And that's certainly something that we can take a deeper dive into when we go through that detailed design process.
I think that would be prudent, Mr. Hycoop, simply because I know it's a private roadway, but council is being asked to approve a plan, and it appears that there may be some frailties, at least from my perspective. And a medical emergency isn't addressed by a sprinkler system. We have had this situation before in town, and we have looked at having a median in the middle of the entrance to at least provide the possibility that if part of it's blocked, there's still part that's left open. You may not have the space to do that. Bearing in mind you want to get some parking spots in here, but anyways, those are my thoughts. Are there any other members of council that have any questions or comments to Mr. Hycoop? If not, then thank you very much, sir. And Mr. Butler will look to see if there's anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the application other than the applicant.
Thanks, Your Worship. So again, now would be your opportunity if you're in the attendee area to raise your virtual hand if you're here to speak in favor of the application. I'm seeing none, Your Worship.
Okay, and then I'll ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak in opposition or ask questions of members of council.
Your Worship, I am seeing one hand raised. I'll bring this person in now.
Thank you.
So we've just brought you in, see the handle of the solver here. So we should be able to unmute your mic and show your video if you wish.
Before you proceed, could we have your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, Frank DeLuca, 4341 Kilman Place, Niagara Falls, Ontario, L2E6P3.
Good evening, Mr. DeLuca.
Thank you.
Looking prosperous.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, the Manadas family, who is the neighboring property, they're not very technically advanced. So I'm going to, I had sent an email earlier today to members of council, and I would just like to read into the record their comments in regards to the proposal.
Sure, proceed.
Yes, the Manadas family has owned and operated Garrison Grill and Subs Thank you for letting me speak, Mayor Redekop and Council. And the Maniatis family has owned and operated Garrison Grill and Subs for over 25 years at 385 Garrison Road. They have received a notice and subsequent report about this development to be done on the neighboring property. We are very disappointed in this report and will not support this application as it has been presented. For your reference, I did attach to your email a aerial drawing, and the concerns are many, but we want them addressed at this meeting because they are financially important to us, and we don't want to lose this opportunity to express them and to be dealt at this stage. We are hoping that council will change their mind about the configuration in front of the building. We would like to ask that the town, remove the abandoned sewer pipe labeled 1 from the Maniatis property. At the same time, remove the pipe labeled 3 from the same parking lot onto the Oxford Living property. These lines carry raw sewage onto our parking lot from Oxford Living's 110 suite retirement residence. We'd also like that the fence that is to be erected go up to the Garrison Grill building and to the end of their parking lot, as similar to all other developments in the area, to improve sight lines and make it look less industrial. We could also ask that you defer this application so the two parties can negotiate changes to the driveway in order to accommodate the encroachment on the neighboring property for over 25 years. We have proposed an entrance 6 meters down from the sidewalk into Garrison Grill so as not to block our access to the property. We are available anytime to discuss this further, the Maniatis family.
Very much, Mr. DeLuca. Is there anything further that you wished to add?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any members of council that have any questions of Mr. DeLuca? If not, then I'll thank you, Mr. DeLuca, and we'll see if there's anyone else who wishes to speak on the issue in opposition or to ask questions.
Your Mayor, Your Worship, I'm seeing no others with their virtual hands raised at this point.
Do you have other people that appear to be attending this meeting?
There are some others in the meeting. They may be here for the next public meeting as well.
Okay, well, let's ask one more time before we close this meeting.
And now is the opportunity to raise your virtual hands. I'm seeing none, Your Worship.
Therefore, I'm going to declare this public meeting closed, and we'll move to the next public meeting, which is the proposed temporary zoning bylaw amendment 409 Gorham Road with respect to the LCBO trailer.
Excuse me, Mayor Redekop.
Yes.
Earlier, you asked if there was the pecuniary interest. I did raise my hand, but obviously you didn't see it. And I have a conflict of interest to declare on this public meeting, and also the report that's following PDS 51-2020.
I'm sorry, Councillor Lubberts. Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. So that's public meeting 6C. So I see Daryl Vanderveen is handling this meeting. So Mr. Vanderveen, if you're ready and willing, let's proceed with this public meeting.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, an application for a temporary zoning bylaw amendment was submitted by Dave Hannum of Zelenka Preamble Limited, who represents Gorham Road, Inc., owner of the subject property. The purpose of this public meeting is to provide information on the proposal for a temporary zoning bylaw amendment for 409 Gorham Road. The purpose of this application is to permit the continued operation of a trailer on site as a liquor store. The trailer is owned by the Liquor Control Board of Ontario, LCBO, and has operated on site as a temporary use since May 2017. The agent and owner proposes to formalize the continued operation of the LCBO trailer through a temporary zoning bylaw amendment that would permit the continued operation of the trailer as a liquor store for up to 3 years. The amendment proposed by the agent and owner would also permit operation on site without asphalt or concrete pavement and curbs due to its temporary nature. Notification of the November 9th, 2020 public meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act by placing a notice in the October 15th, 2020 edition of the Fort Erie Post newspaper. In addition, all property owners within 120 meters were mailed a notice of complete application and public meeting on October 15th, 2020. A virtual information open house was held via Zoom for this application on October 21st, 2020. The agent, town staff, and 2 members of the public attended the meeting. There were no objections at that time. The subject property is located in the Ridgeway Thunder Bay neighborhood. The subject property is on the west side of Gorham Road, near the intersection of Gorham Road and Dominion Road. A portion of the property extends beyond the urban boundary, but this is not subject to the zoning bylaw amendment. In addition to the LCBO trailer, there's also a vacant commercial building on site. The subject property is irregular in shape, and again, a portion of it extends outside the urban boundary into the agricultural area. A portion of the property is also identified as provincially significant wetland under the regulation of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. The area of the property subject to this amendment is limited to the existing commercial area that is within the urban boundary. The following summarizes the land uses surrounding the subject property. To the north, single detached dwellings along Gorham Road, the Beaver Creek Estates subdivision and a daycare facility. To the south, vacant commercial land, an EMS station operated by Niagara Region, and other commercial uses along Gorham Road. To the east, Gorham Road and single detached dwellings. And to the west, agricultural lands and provincially significant wetlands, again under the regulation of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. The subject property is designated agricultural, commercial, environmental conservation, and environmental protection in the Ridgeway Thunder Bay secondary plan. The portion of the property subject to the zoning bylaw amendment is designated commercial and is within the urban boundary. This portion is also identified as being part of the Gorham Commercial Gateway and the Ridgeway Thunder Bay secondary plan. Land designated as commercial and identified as being within the Gorham Commercial Gateway is intended for commercial uses that are automotive friendly and serve the local community, as well as commuter and seasonal traffic from Ridgeway Thunder Bay and Crystal Beach neighborhoods. Commercial lands are intended for retail and office uses. The subject property has several natural heritage features on site, again, including provincially significant wetlands. It's also identified as being locally significant natural area and woodlands over 2 hectares. The rear portion of the property that is outside of the urban boundary is also part of an environmental corridor. Staff note that the proposed trailer is located east of the existing commercial building on the subject property and will not impact any of the natural heritage features on site. The subject property is currently zoned Highway Commercial C3 zone, Environmental Protection EP zone, Environmental Conservation EC Overlay zone, and Agricultural A zone. The agent has submitted a zoning bylaw amendment application in accordance with Section 39 of the Planning Act to permit the continued operation of the LCBO trailer on the subject property. Section 39 enables a municipality to pass a zoning bylaw that authorizes the temporary use of land, buildings, or structures for any purpose that is otherwise prohibited by the bylaw for up to 3 years. This proposal will rezone the portion of the property that is zoned Highway Commercial C3 zone to a site-specific Highway Commercial C3 zone that permits the continued use of the trailer as a liquor store for a 3-year duration. A liquor store is permitted by the C3 zoning. The town zoning bylaw also requires commercial uses to have paved areas that are bounded by curbs. The agent is requesting a site-specific provision to be added to the zoning to permit the continued use of gravel parking area with repair and maintenance as necessary given the temporary nature of the trailer. This is the proposed site plan for the temporary zoning bylaw amendment. The proposal will maintain the status quo of the existing operation. The LCBO trailer will remain in its current position just east of the existing commercial building. Parking and loading will occur on site with a small portion of 399 Gorham Road being used for delivery truck movements and parking. 409 Gorham Road and 399 Gorham Road have merged in title and are recognized as one whole parcel from a planning perspective. And this is looking towards the site west from Gorham Road. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Van der Veen. Do any members of council have any questions of Mr. Van der Veen? And there we go. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. We got an email from someone who was asking about could anything be done to the pavement itself or the lack of pavement because of dust. Has the owner thought about that or considered that?
I haven't heard from the owner as of yet. Maybe perhaps when we bring them on to speak in favor of the application, the owner or the agent can provide some input on that. Yeah.
Anything further, Councillor Noyes?
Yeah, they're looking, yes, thank you, Mayor Redekop. They're looking for a 3-year extension. Is there, obviously a 3-year extension, I think is the max that we can do on a temporary, but is there any reason why we should not be asking it for 1 year or 2 years instead of the 3? Like, are they not anticipating making any changes or any development there?
Yeah, again, I think I'll leave that to the agent to speak to their plan for the long-term development on the site, but they have asked specifically for a 3-year period as afforded under Section 39 of the Planning Act.
Thank you, that's all.
Thank you. Any other members of council? Mr. Van der Veen, just the report goes into it. You made some comment about it, but just for clarity, right now, the way the zoning bylaw stands, is this a permitted use, a trailer for commercial operation?
We were permitting it under our general provisions, which permit temporary uses. So a temporary use is basically a use that has a set duration. We were setting the timeline through a site plan approval process. So we were kind of approving the site plan and sort of extending it along. However, earlier this year, staff took the position that that was no longer the appropriate means to go about dealing with this, as it's already been a 3-year duration. So the agent has opted to apply for a zoning bylaw amendment, a temporary zoning bylaw amendment under Section 39, rather than go through our temporary use provisions.
Right. So I think the report indicates that this has been in use since May of 2017, which is 3.5 years. So with another 3 years, that would be 6.5 years. That may be temporary, I guess, when one looks at the concave nature of history. But if one looks at planning, 6.5 years seems like a long time for a temporary use. Any comment on that?
No comment for me at this time. I think I'll let the agent maybe offer some comments. I know the trailer was placed there as part of market research with the intent that perhaps like a retail outlet store would be integrated into future development in the area.
Right. And in terms of the trailer itself, there was a photograph that was shown. I've been by it a few times. I believe there are stairs to go up into the trailer. Am I correct on that?
That is correct. There's stairs on the east side, or sorry, the north side of the trailer to enter the trailer itself.
Is there any accessibility issue with respect to this trailer in terms of the fact that it's sitting there and it has stairs for people to get in?
Not that I'm aware of.
I'm going to go to Ms. Dole. She's put her hand up. I think she may be able to rescue you here, Mr.
Oh,
Vanderbilt.
thank you. Director Dole?
Through to the mayor. It does have an accessible lift on the south side of the building in order for wheelchairs to get into the building to be accessible. In addition, I just wanted to comment on the temporary nature and what has transpired over the years. So as Mr. Van der Veen indicated, we have been approving this on a temporary basis through site plan approval. There comes a point in time when it no longer is temporary through our provisions. So we felt that it was time now that this is becoming a longer standing use, to go through the formal Planning Act process of a temporary use through the zoning bylaw amendment, which council has the ability to approve or deny.
Thank you. That's very helpful, Ms. Dolch. Did you have further comment?
No, just in terms of the question from Councillor Noyes, we will be talking to the developer about the dust issue and the suppression issue to see if there's a way we can resolve that issue.
Right. And when the town staff was dealing with this on a site plan approval basis, how frequently was it being reviewed?
It was being reviewed yearly. It was a yearly extension. So
this doesn't seem to be an ideal situation in terms of we've had 3.5 years of the temporary facility. Now the developer's asking for, the owner's asking for another 3 years at 6.5 years, and could very well be asking for a further extension at that time. Who knows? Do you have any comments on how this fits in with our general planning approach in Fort Erie?
So longer term, obviously, our long-term planning approach is to have the bricks and mortar building constructed on that site for more highway commercial type uses. In terms of when that's going to occur, that's the question. Ideally, we'd like to see that happen sooner rather than later, and obviously have the LCBO in a permanent structure. That's our long-term game plan. I appreciate they are waiting for the owner to complete that building and apply for site plan approval. So I do understand why they're asking for this temporary extension. But at the same time, I'm curious when this will occur, the building construction.
Right. Thank you very much, Ms. Dolch. Do any other members of council have any questions at this point? If not, then Mr. Butler, perhaps you could ask the applicant or agent if they wish to address council.
Your worship, I have, I believe, 2 agents that I'll bring into the meeting right now. So we have Mr. McFarland coming in and a Mr. Hannum. And I'm all going to share my screen again with their presentation.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Aaron. We have a brief presentation this evening. My name is Rob McFarland. I'm a planner at Zanko. We represent the LCBO for the application here for a temporary zoning bylaw amendment. We have a brief presentation. We want to keep our comments fairly short and address the comments that have been raised by council so far. Staff did an excellent job summarizing the background information with respect to this proposal, so we'll keep our comments brief as to not be too redundant. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Again, this is just the locational context that staff have summarized. If we can go to the next slide. Staff presented this image as well, and just to provide a bit more background context here, as staff mentioned, this site was previously developed for a retail structure. It's currently vacant, and the LCBO's trailer operation is located in front of that vacant commercial structure. We're utilizing in part that vacant structure for advertising and marketing purposes for this structure. And from the frontage, it appears as if this LCBO is its own retail structure. So they're effectively using it as a screening purpose from an otherwise vacant building. The LCBO has been operating, as council have already noted, for approximately 3.5 years now, since May of 2017, approximately. Previously, it was operating on a seasonal basis, only in the summertime. They've since moved towards an annual, year-round operation, and they're looking for an extension to these permissions that are existing for a period of up to 3 years. To respond to council's questions of timing, we're seeking up to 3 years just to allow the time to establish those bricks and mortar stores. The LCBO is working hard to find a permanent location and do their market analysis to determine what's feasible. And so as that's being done, and as the owner undertakes, as staff have mentioned, potential development in this area, The LCBO just wants to maintain a market presence through the establishment of this temporary sales trailer and the continued operation. I would also mention that the LCBO, they only have 2 temporary sales trailers within their fleet. It's not as if a temporary sales trailer is something that gets thrown out to different municipalities throughout Ontario. They do only have 2 sales trailers that they operate, and they throw those out to strategic locations where they do want to maintain a market presence as they do either market research or as they look for bricks and mortar store as part of that research as well. So that's just some additional context in terms of how the LCBO operates these sales trailers. If we can go to the next slide, please. Staff provided a great summary of what this zoning bylaw amendment does and does not represent. Again, just to reiterate, it is a temporary zoning bylaw amendment, a period of up to 3 years. By its nature, a sales trailer is temporary. It's not the LCBO's intent to operate this in a permanent fashion. So in our opinion, a temporary zoning bylaw amendment is appropriate for this site and for the nature of what's proposed here. The existing liquor store, as staff mentioned, is a permitted use and contemplated within this location. It's simply the format that isn't permitted. The sales trailer isn't something that's contemplated long-term. And so we're seeking to have that permitted in the short term as we figure out that long-term solution. As staff have also noted, we are seeking to amend the zoning bylaw to allow for the gravel parking area to be maintained as is. From our perspective, paving the parking area isn't a sustainable practice financially or environmentally. So when we know this is a period of up to 3 years as we look for a more permanent solution and a potential redevelopment of the site, for that to be demolished in the near future, not something that is, in my opinion, in the public interest. And so we are thinking about what to do to mitigate concerns over dust created by this site. And at a preliminary basis, we hope to have further discussions with staff, but at a preliminary basis, we're thinking some sort of sprinkler system or some sort of watering system on dry periods where there hasn't been rain to ensure that the gravel isn't overly dry, may be able to mitigate moving forward. So that's something that we'll discuss further with staff, but it is something that's being considered and reviewed on our end. If we can go to the next slide, please. So as mentioned, this application is effectively to maintain the status quo. The LCBO isn't seeking to establish permissions beyond what has been operating on site previously. And so what we're looking to do is simply maintain what the LCBO's operations currently are. So we do anticipate some site refinements through the site plan approval process. And those will be further determined through staff, specifically to the parking area and delineating parking spots. If we can go to the next slide, please. That's our brief presentation. If you do have questions beyond what was presented here, I believe I tried to address the questions that were raised, but if there is anything further, we're happy to make ourselves available to respond to any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. McFarland. Mr. Hannam, did you have anything you wanted to say at this point?
No, Rob's covered it all. Thanks.
Okay. Any members of council have any questions of Mr. McFarland or Mr. Hannam? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop, to the I think it's Mr. Hannam. In regards to the porch lift that you have there, now I understand because it's a trailer, it does not have to meet building code. The building codes don't apply. I actually talked to Mr. Jennings earlier today about the porch lift there. When was the last time that porch lift was inspected? Like, do they have to at least be inspected on a regular basis?
Gentlemen, which one of you can respond to that?
I'm happy to. I would assume that it needs to be inspected like any other barrier-free access. We can confirm that, but you know, from a liability point of view, the LCBO would want to ensure that that's operating in compliance. So I would anticipate that it's inspected as and when needed.
I would, thank you, Mr. Ham. I would appreciate that because I think it's supposed to be inspected every 6 months. But again, that is for a building. So I understand that because it's a trailer, not all the rules apply. So I'm not quite sure which would apply and which one wouldn't, because it's a temporary, because it's a trailer and it's a porch lift. But you are looking at an additional 3 years for that. Are there any plans of improving the access as opposed to just the porch lift?
Your worship.
Sorry, you go, Rob.
Yeah, in terms of accessibility for persons with disability, is that what you're referencing, Councillor?
Yes.
Through your worship, these temporary sales trailers, they're standardized trailers that have been established by the LCBO, and there's 2 of them in the fleet. And so in terms of accessibility, that the accessibility means are built in with the trailer themselves. And so I'm not aware of any revisions to the LCBO's fleet in that regard at this point. I don't know, Dave, if you had anything beyond that.
No, in some circumstances, they've had the 2 trailers joined together to make a larger store. That happened in Toronto when we were rebuilding an existing store. But as Rob alluded to, these things are purpose-built for single use. So I wouldn't anticipate that there would be an alteration. And when you mean alteration, you mean, what did you have in mind in terms of changes?
If I can, Mayor Redekop, in regards, like if that was not a trailer, let's say it was a building and it needed a porch lift, it could, and because it's public, it would not be, a porch lift would not be allowed. You would have to have a fully enclosed lift system, so to speak. You can't just have a porch lift because of safety reasons.
Gentlemen? Any comment by either of you?
We could certainly have a look at that and provide some comments back to council again and to staff in terms of whether the LCBO have any experience with how these work when they're maintained and whether there's options for any improvements as well.
Thank you. Councillor Noyes, anything further?
No, I just appreciate that information. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other councillors? So gentlemen, my understanding is that when this trailer was first installed, the idea was to do some market research. Has there been market research done over the past 3.5 years?
Yes,
they have. And look, we're the planning consultants for the LCBO, but we're not privileged to the ongoing sort of real estate discussions between landlords and landowners. But as you can appreciate, it's a bit of a moving feast for the LCBO, particularly currently, but they certainly have been looking. These deals don't come together overnight, but we have no reason to believe that they're not trying to find a bricks and mortar location within this market. They're certainly not in the temporary trailer market. They're in the bricks and mortar market for the benefit of, the provincial taxpayers. So my understanding is that they're certainly trying to find something. But as you can appreciate, the dollars and cents side of it needs to stack up as well. And at this point in time, there is a microscope on that sort of aspect.
Is this currently still seasonal, or is it now operating year-round?
Well, it started off as seasonal sort of from May till October. And then, look, I must say that municipal staff have been very patient with us with regards to the temporary nature of it. The following year, it was seasonal with all intentions as well. But in this location, it did very well in the fall, and they wanted to extend it through the winter as well, rather than redeploying it back into a storage shed in Toronto. And so we kept on through that following winter, and then we asked for an extension further to the next October. And that's when municipal staff said, look, I think we need to throw a development application at this to formalise it. So it's been sort of stop-start, but more continuous for the last 18 months or so.
And I'm going to imagine that town staff, if they had some inkling that this situation was going to change to something more permanent, they might not be pressing so hard. But I'm getting the impression that you don't know what the timing might be, and our staff doesn't know what the timing might be. And so who knows, could be another 3 years.
As I said, I'm not really privileged to those discussions, but what we have to do is try and cover, the LCBO's aspirations within this particular market. This is the thing that is the balance is right for them at this point in time, while they look to try and find a bricks and mortar store. But obviously, with the temporary use side of it, it can be up to 3 years. The benefit of the temporary use is we can test the market on a continuous basis, but it also gives the municipality the ability to control whether there are any issues and whether they renew it or not. Obviously, there's no obligation for council to renew it after that initial period, and there's no appeal rights after that as well. So it gives both sides the flexibility to try and find the right solution in the long term.
Thank you. Mr. McFarland mentioned that there are only 2 temporary sales trailers, I believe, in the province. Is that correct?
Yep.
And where is the other one?
The other one was up in Port Carling last year. My understanding is it's back in Toronto, tucked away and in storage.
Yeah, that would clearly be a seasonal trailer because there wouldn't be many people up there in the winter. So I guess I'm a little perplexed, knowing that this has gone on this length of time, knowing that there has been market research done, knowing that this is a busy location, and knowing that we're looking at the possibility of this situation existing for maybe another 3 years. I'm a little surprised that the LCBO isn't being a bit more aggressive in its search for a long-term solution. You don't have to comment on that. I'm just opining out loud. Any other councillors have any questions? If not, thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm going to go then to anyone who wishes to speak in support of the application, other than, of course, the owner or the agents.
I'm seeing none, Your Worship.
Okay. Is there anyone then who wishes to speak in opposition or raise any questions with respect to the application?
Again, now would be your time to raise your virtual hand if you wish to speak in opposition or ask any questions of council on this application. I'm seeing none, Your Worship.
So I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the application or ask any questions of council with respect to the application? Any hands up?
Not seeing any, Your Worship.
Okay, I'm going to declare this public meeting closed, and that's going to take us to the consent agenda. Are there any items that anyone wishes removed from the consent agenda? Then could I have a mover for the agenda?
Your Worship, there was something I wanted removed.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand up. Go ahead, Councillor.
No, that's fine. I'd like to remove PDS 53-2020.
Yes. Okay. So Councillor McDermott, you're moving the consent agenda items less PDS 53-2020. Is there anyone else that wanted anything else removed that I missed? Okay. Any questions or comments with respect to the items in the consent agenda package? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. In regards to PDS 52-2020, the Planning and Development Services Building and Bylaw Statistical Reporting, I was happy to see that we've had an increase in industrial builds, so that's really good, and also in commercial. In the bylaw section of it, it talked about 23 calls from short-term rentals, complaints to the bylaw. I'm just wondering if any of these calls were repeat offenders.
Ms. Dolch, would you know that?
Through you to the councillor, I'd have to look into the details of those calls, but I can get something back.
Okay, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other questions or comments?
Yes, in IS 41-2020, the guide rail replacement, I had a chance to talk to the Director Kelly Walsh earlier in regards to how many will be left, just an approximate in regards to when we do the ones that are listed. there's still a lot left to be done. And I wondered if Mr. Walsh could give us an idea of how many and describe what the change is.
Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Just on bridge and culverts, which have been evaluated as part of a biannual program, we have about a dozen outstanding that are substandard in terms of either construction or meeting the proper standards that exist today as opposed to the standards when they were installed. So we've got a good number of years worked. We're going to look at the rest of the guide throughout town over the next few months and put together a plan on how to address the remainder.
Councillor Noyes?
No, thank you for that explanation. And one more report, the CAO report 24-2020, the Accessibility Advisory Status Report.
Yes.
I sit on that committee, and I just wanted to comment on how helpful the Bradman is for that. And also, if when you do review it, you can see how much work the Accessibility Committee has done with, of course, with staff support, and how much community engagement we are getting. And a good example was the dollar store, where one of our members had a complaint about he has a vision impairment, and he couldn't see the return, like no returns no matter what, and he couldn't see that, so he needed to return something within minutes of buying, and it was told he couldn't. And we called the head office, and they corrected everything. They fixed the door that wasn't working. They educated their staff, and they are now assisting individuals to their cars if they need that assistance for things that they buy. So that's just one example of how the committee really works with the community and the residents. And again, there was a great buy-in from the dollar store itself, and very apologetic that the individual did have to, was put in a position where he couldn't really deal with the situation properly. Thank you.
Those comments are well taken, Councillor Mills. Any other questions by members of council or comments? Ms. Dolch, do we have a running total as to the number of residential permits that have been granted to date in 2020?
No, I don't have the number with me right now, but it is significantly higher than previous years.
So is it likely to boost the 5-year rolling average beyond 215?
Yes, it is. It is above that.
And Mr. Cookett, with respect to CAO 23, just want to confirm that the indemnification provided by Fort Erie International Academy remains in existence even if we provide them with a refund.
You are correct, Your Worship. It's in the agreement that we have with DPAS that any future costs, even if we release these funds, we are protected and they will have to pick up those costs.
Right. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? If not, I'll call the question on the amended consent agenda. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. That is carried. Councillor McDermott, would you move PDS 53-2020, please? Yep. Okay. Councillor Dubanow, you had a question or questions.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm sure my colleagues on council earlier today got an email from a resident, or rather a property owner in the area, who had a similar interest, or at least expressed an interest in purchasing this property. And I understand the region has their eye on it for, the expansion of the pumping station there, but I'm not sure I feel comfortable approving this until that situation is fleshed out, so to speak. And I'm just almost asking for guidance here if this is something that we should perhaps postpone until that has been dealt with and rectified, or should we, I mean, otherwise I would probably be voting against this recommendation at this time.
Which situation is it you want fleshed out?
How would you work this out? Because my understanding is with limited markability property that it's offered to the neighboring property owners to merge title, and the other property is a neighboring property. And I understand the region is also a neighboring property who has an interest in this for the pump expansion. But I'm a little concerned that we could be jumping ahead of the process and not offering at least the opportunity for the neighboring property owner to be involved in this as well. And I'm concerned about fairness and transparency in the process to make sure that this is dealt with properly so both sides get a fair shake.
It's transparent in the sense that this is a public document, a public report, and we're discussing it publicly. I don't know, Mr. Butler, did you want to address this, or Ms. Dolch? I'm happy to hear from either of you.
Through you to the councillor. So this site, obviously, we're recommending that we waive the land sale policy, and that's the recommendation we've put forth. And that would mean that it would be sold to the region based on that value. The reason we're looking at the region, and I do know that now we have this other interested party, is because it will facilitate long-term the expansion of that pumping station, which is good for the community of the whole town of Fort Erie. In terms of this new request, I have had a chance, and so has Mr. Butler, to look at the parcel to the north who's interested. And it is an irregular shaped parcel, and I do not see the benefit to that parcel in terms of a redevelopment or anything else, how it would benefit from a planning sense. So at this point in time, I'd be still inclined to recommend the waiving the land sale policy to sell to the region.
Joel, just to clarify, is it the parcel to the east or the parcel to the north that is interested in this? I thought it was 263.
263 to the north.
It's to the east.
Your worship, if I may, it's the property to the north. I think the address is 269.
269.
Sorry.
Okay, and so, all right, so we're not talking about 263. That had been my understanding. Okay, Councillor Dubanow, back to you.
No, that answers my question. I'm still a little concerned about how quickly this is unfolding and having to make a decision on this evening. But I appreciate the position of the planning staff. I'm good with how I'm going to decide on this evening. So I yield my time, Your Worship.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. And this is something that's been under discussion for a year and almost a half. So it's not something that came out of the blue. Any other questions or comments with respect to this particular report and the recommendations contained in it? If not, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the recommendations in the report? Opposed? That is carried. So then that takes us to Planning and Development Services, and that is Councillor Zanko.
Yes, thank you. Planning and Development Services is now in session. We do not have any presentations or delegations, so that brings us to report PDS 49-2020, Proposed Official Plan and Zoning Bylaw Amendment 277 Stevensville Road. Can I have a mover? Councillor McDermott. That is on the floor for comments or questions. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? That carries. That now brings us to PDS 50-2020, Proposed Draft Plan of Vacant Land Condominium and Zoning Bylaw Amendment 397 Garrison Road. Can I have a mover? Councillor Butler. That report is on the floor for comments or questions. Mayor Redekop, and then Councillor Noyes.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate my concern about the access and egress and how we're being asked to approve this, and there may be no problem, nothing may ever occur, but unfortunately we have to contemplate the possibility that it may. So I hope that staff will have a good opportunity to have some further meaningful discussions, because it doesn't look like there's any alternate point of access for vehicles from this parcel in the vicinity of the south. If there is, that would be fantastic, but I'm not sure. So I have that concern, and I hope that it will be taken into account as staff continues to deal.
Okay, anything further, Mayor Redekop?
Nope.
Okay, Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor Zanko. Actually, that was my comment, basically with Mayor Redekop. I am concerned about the getting in and out of that subdivision. It is 24, I think 24 homes. And it's unfortunate that there wasn't more planning where it could have perhaps hooked into phase one and had a direct, had another exit from that, from the phase three section. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor of the report? That carries. That brings us to report PDS 51-2020, proposed temporary zoning bylaw amendment, 409 Gorham Road. Can I get a mover? Councillor Dubanow? That's on the floor now for comments or questions. Councillor Noyes, and then we'll go to you, Councillor Dubanow. Oh, you're on mute.
I would be hesitant to approve a 3-year extension. I would like, because I'd like to see something happening. Like, again, it's been 3.5 years, so that's not temporary to me anymore. And they're looking for another 3 years. And I don't know if we would let any other business set up shop in a trailer for this length of time. I think they're somewhat taking advantage of the situation and just keep moving the deadline further and further back. So I would be hesitant to agree to a 3-year extension. I'd rather see it on a yearly basis. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I share similar concerns that were expressed by the Mayor and Councillor Noyes during the public meeting about the length of time that this has taken to have a proper brick and mortar building done. I've also at the same time had employees who work for the LCBO at that location concerned that if the municipality does not approve this temporary bylaw, that their employment would be in jeopardy. So I'm between a rock and a hard place here as to how I'd want to proceed. I think for the moment now, they're requesting a 3-year extension. I think that is grudgingly appropriate. Should, if the way the universe works, if I find myself still here 3 years from now, I may not look at it so favorably if they ask again. And at that point, I may say no. But for this evening, considering that we have employees who work there and that the LCBO has not made a commitment, I think it's appropriate to do this. And we'll see what happens after, as long as they've been put on notice that this is not something that can continue forever. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Mayor Redekop?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think I would like, I'm going to support this for the time being. I can't say that I'm sold on 3 years, but I think in the meantime, perhaps staff can obtain some information from the LCBO with respect to what kind of market research they've done, what kind of efforts they've actually made to find another site, why it is that they're having difficulties. I would imagine that the current owner of the property would be quite happy to try to accommodate them. So I'd like to maybe get a little bit more information with respect to why 3.5 years later, we're looking at another 3 years. And I think the LCBO has done pretty much what it needs to do to make some decisions. Obviously, they want to spend money if they don't have to, but you know, the other thing is this is temporary. They're in a good spot. I mean, they're not spending a lot of money on this trailer. I get that. They're trying to generate revenues and profits. And I appreciate Councillor Dubanow's comments about employees. And I'm sure that it's very convenient for the residents to have a facility quite close to the facility that was closed several years ago. But I think we can get a little bit more information that will assist us in making our determination. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is there any other councillor before we go back to Councillor Noyes? Okay, Councillor Noyes.
Councillor Zanko. I was just wondering if we can get some information from the ED TS to see if they've ever been approached by the LCBO, if there's been any dialogue. I'm sure the Economic Development and Tourism Services may be able to help facilitate them finding a more permanent spot. And I'm just wondering if there's been any dialogue at all with them. Because if there's not, then I'm really not going to be supporting it. Thanks.
Ms. Dolch, are you able to comment on that?
Through you to the councillor, I'm not aware of that, if they have approached the EDTS. I do know I did try to facilitate the relocation to another building previously, but it didn't work out.
Okay. Anything further, Councillor Noyes? No?
Nothing further.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? I just have one question to you, Ms. Dolch. The comments that we received from some of the area residents was mostly regarding the dust. I know during the presentation this evening, it was mentioned that there might be some water put on the gravel just to suppress the dust, but could we not request that they use an actual dust suppressant for the parking lot in order to avoid this concern?
Yes, we can definitely look at a dust suppressant system. They do use it on some construction sites to help control the dust, especially during the summer dry months, as they were indicating.
Okay, great. I just don't think water in the summer dry months is going to be that much of a solution. Perfect. I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That report carries. That brings us to PDS 55-2020, proposed draft plan of common elements condominium 015199 Ridgeway Road. Can I get a mover? Councillor McDermott. That report is on the floor. Mayor Redekop.
This all looks very vaguely familiar. Did we not do some type of public process with respect to maybe rezoning of this plan of subdivision?
Ms. Dolch.
Through you, His Worship, yes, we did. We did a rezoning not long ago on this. This is just going through the condominium common element now.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? That report carries. That brings us to new business and inquiries, and we do have a response to inquiry. So Ms. Dolch, if you would like to read that for us, that would be wonderful.
Okay. So inquiry by Councillor Zanko on September 21st council meeting. Nature of inquiry, September 21st, 2020, regular council meeting resolution number 3B. Staff are requested to obtain a legal opinion with respect to the municipality's obligations under the subdivision agreement at Erie Beach. The response, Planning and Development Services staff reached out to the town's development lawyer, Richard Halinda, for an opinion regarding this matter. Mr. Halinda provided the following points. A change to the scope of the paving works for the laneway does not require an amendment to the subdivision agreement. Section 4.3 of the subdivision agreement states that the town may require in writing such variances from the plans as it may deem appropriate. Therefore, the agreement gives staff the ability to make changes within the parameters set out in the agreement without needing further council approval. Further, the subdivision agreement does not make a direct reference to what the proposed width of the laneways were to have been, nor does it refer to any specific plans for the laneways. Therefore, the town is not bound by the agreement to pave the 6-meter wide laneways as had been originally contemplated. The 6-meter wide requirement is set out in a cross-section drawing on an approved engineering plan. However, point number 2, however, if a change in scope is contemplated, then consent from the benefiting property owners, those with the driveways gaining access to their properties by using the laneway, should be received. It would make sense that Fort Max GP Inc., the developer, be notified of the town's intention to change the width of the laneway, and consent can be sought from the developer. However, since it has defaulted on its obligations with respect to the subdivision agreement, its consent isn't necessary prior to implementing a change. Point number 3, the original subdivision agreement and subsequent amending agreement require that the property owners with direct benefit to the laneway are required to enter into a reciprocal cost-sharing agreement. This agreement should include the consent of these parties to the reduced pavement width. If a reduced width is not consented to, then this agreement will provide for these lot owners to be responsible for the maintenance of the pavement on the laneway, as well as any grass within the laneway lands. Planning and Development Services staff have reached out to 2 benefiting property owners of the laneway between Buttonwood Drive and Celebration Drive. Both property owners are agreeable to reducing the paved portion of the laneway to 15 feet, centered in the laneway with grass on either side. An email indicating their position has been attached for your reference. If directed by council to reduce the width of the laneway, planning staff will also contact the benefiting property owners along the other 2 laneways within the subdivision to receive consent on reducing the width to 15 feet. As mentioned above, the benefiting property owners are required to enter into a reciprocal cost-sharing agreement for their respective laneways. It has been recommended to staff by Mr. Halinda that these agreements be prepared to ensure the benefiting property owners are made aware of their obligation with respect to these laneways. These agreements should be entered into by the property owners prior to commencement of the paving works. For clarification, each laneway is shown in the sketch below with the benefiting property outlined in the same color as the laneway. To summarize, should council wish to proceed, planning staff recommend the following steps would need to be undertaken. Number 1, council directs staff regarding the size of the laneways, example, 15 feet paved width centered with grass on either side. 2, staff reaches out to the remaining benefiting property owners for their consent to a reduced pavement width. 3, if consent is received from all benefiting property owners concerning their respective laneway, staff will prepare reciprocal cost-sharing agreements for the benefiting property owners in accordance with the subdivision agreement. 4, if consent is not received, then the respective laneway will be paved in accordance with the original approved plan. And 5, paving occurs. Planning staff recommend that the following motion would be sufficient to provide staff with direction to proceed. That staff amend the approved plans for the subdivision at Erie Beach to reduce the paved width of the laneways to no less than 15 feet centered within the subject parcels, subject to receiving consent from property owners having a direct driveway access to their respective laneway.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Stoltz. I'm wondering if I can pass the chair to Councillor Noyes so I can comment and ask questions on this. That would be okay with you?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, perfect.
Councillor Zanko, do you have any questions?
I do, thank you. I think this is excellent news, and through you, Chair Noyes, to Ms. Stoltz. I think this is really good news. It does find consensus within the neighborhood, I believe. And I am prepared to make that motion. I know that obviously I would have to wait until the next regular council meeting, unless maybe Mayor Redekop, there would be an area that we could waive the rules of procedure this evening. The only reason why I'm asking for that is because I know some of the residents that are impacted and have the encroachment are looking to start hiring contractors to make some changes. And they have been given notice that as we proceed into the winter months that they won't be able to do that. So it's kind of become rather urgent. So I don't know whether that's something that the clerk could help me with, Councillor Noyes, or.
Thank you, Councillor Zanko. I see that Mayor Redekop has his hand up first, so I'll let Mayor Redekop.
Yeah, my view would be that this is on the agenda and it's a recommendation from staff in a response to an inquiry. I don't think you need to give specific notice. If the clerk disagrees with me on that, then I'll stand corrected. But I think it's on the agenda and I think that it could be dealt with this evening. The only comment that I would have is I think it would be helpful if staff was able to determine whether 15 feet is the least amount of pavement that's required. I know some of the property owners would like something less. Some would like no less than 15 feet. Edgemere, I think we were told, is 12 feet. I know that there's one boat owner and there's somebody that has a garage that's somewhat in there. So I don't know whether there's any sense in staff trying to find that out, or if they've already found it out, that 15 is the bottom line for some of them who would be using the laneway. And I found I meant to try to reach the lawyer who provided the opinion, because I find it a little confusing as to what the municipality has to do and what it should do. But I think in the spirit of collaboration with the residents, it makes sense to consult them.
Ms. Schofield, did you want to talk about?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, yes, I agree completely with Mayor Redekop. It's appropriate to do it this evening under new business. It is a direction to staff and there has been discussion on it. So if he's comfortable with that, that's perfectly fine.
And the other one was Ms. Dolch. There was a question directed to you in regards to the width of the laneway being 15 feet, whether that would be adequate.
Thank you. Through you, His Worship. We did talk to two property owners, the ones on behind Celebration and Buttonwood that use that laneway behind. They have indicated 15 would be as low as they'd be willing to go. The other two property owners on either laneway we haven't been in contact with. We plan to do so though, and I'm not sure whether or not a lesser amount would be acceptable or not.
Thank you. Councillor Zanko, going back to you.
You know what, you can go back to Mayor Redekop. I see he has his hand up.
Okay, Mayor Redekop.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why, if it's going to be 15 feet or whatever width it's going to be, I'm wondering why it has to be in the middle, because that may have no significance for some of the property owners. It may have some significance for others of the property owners. So I'm just wondering why it would necessarily have to be in the middle if more benefit can be obtained if it's not necessarily right smack in the middle.
Mr. Holt.
Through you to His Worship. When we had discussions with the property owners, the benefiting property owners, they did indicate they wanted it centered in the middle of the laneway.
Thank you.
And going back to you, Councillors. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Lubberts. You have your mute on. You got your mute on again.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was muted from the public meetings. Yeah, I received a phone call from one of the residents in the area, and she indicated that she understood that this was coming to council tonight. She was under the impression that we were going to be voting on it tonight as well. But she did indicate that although she could live with the 15 feet, she would prefer 12. But so that would be up to council. But again, she was expecting the vote to happen tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Lubberts. Councillor Zanko, anything further?
No, but I do intend to make that motion during new business.
Okay, thank you. Then I will turn all those in favor of the report.
Excuse me, on a point of order, we're dealing with this right now. I think you can bring your motion right now. I think that's what's contemplated, and I see the clerk is shaking her head.
Okay. Councillor Zanko.
Okay, I would like to make that motion that staff amend the approved plans for the subdivision at Erie Beach to reduce the paved width of the laneway to no less than 15 feet, centered within subject parcels, subject to receiving consent from the property owners having direct driveway access to their respective laneway.
Any comments? Oh, you need a seconder, I think. Marina. Councillor Butler.
Chair, if I could, we are in committee, so we don't need
Oh,
seconder.
we don't need a seconder, okay. But we never put the report on the floor. Did we?
No,
it was just a response to an inquiry. I don't think we ever had a report on the floor.
You don't need that.
On the floor.
Okay. So all those okay, Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'd like to make an amendment to that. to change it from 15 feet to 12 feet.
Councillor Zanko, would you consider that a friendly amendment?
You know, I wouldn't support that simply because I know that the two property owners that are benefiting from the laneway would not agree to that. I know staff have already been speaking with them regarding which width they would be comfortable with, and I feel that that would just stall this process even more.
Councillor Lubberts, I guess what the amendment is now on the floor, I don't need a second, I understand. Mayor, so I'll go to Mayor Redekop to comment on the amendment.
Yeah, I raised this issue in my questioning because I was concerned. I don't think, to be honest with you, I don't think 15 feet is necessary. I don't live there though. Councillor Zanko and I were out there a while ago and we met with all the residents, had a nice little tour, saw some of the things that are going on there. It's a lovely area. One of the people has a boat and would have to have adequate space in order to maneuver the boat onto his property. The other lady has a garage and she would have to be able to get to her garage. So that's why I'm saying this paving, if it has to be centered, I do hope that the paving goes over to the end of her driveway so that I'm going to support this as it is, but I would hope that staff would have a little further dialogue to see whether 15 feet is the max that has to be included. But if it is, I think that's fair.
Okay. Again, we're talking right now about the amendment to reduce it to 12 feet. Any other comments or questions on the amendment? Okay, all those in favor of the amendment? All those against? The amendment does not pass. So that brings us back to the original report. Councillor Zanko for the 15 feet. Any further questions on the 15 feet? Having seen none, all those in favor? All those against? The report carries. I will now turn the chair back over to Councillor Zanko.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Noyes. Does any member of council have any new business or inquiries? Seeing none, that brings us to the business status report. Are there any comments or questions regarding the business status report? Mayor Redekop.
Yes, I notice on the business status report that for the December 7th meeting, there's a projection that Niagara Boulevard and Bowen Road properties, which are along the Frenchman's Creek area, there's supposed to be a public meeting. I do hope that we'll make sure that all those who are entitled to timely notification do get notice of that meeting, because there's been some discussion about this application already following a public open house that was held, I think, the last week of October. And for some reason, some of the residents got delayed notice.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I will hand the chair back to you, Mayor Redekop.
Thank you very much, Councillor Zanko. That takes us to infrastructure services, and that's you, Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Infrastructure Services is now in session. There are no presentations and delegations. That brings us to report number IS 40-2020, the Rural Ditching Master Plan. And are there any comments or questions? Councillor, Ms. Schofield?
Yes, Chair, you need a mover.
Oh, I always forget that. Okay. Who would like to move it? Mayor Redekop? Okay, now that report's now on the floor for comments and questions. Mayor Redekop.
Yeah, this is really long overdue, and I believe the staff acknowledged that during the course of the report. It's a bit of a large pill to be swallowing, but anybody that travels around the rural areas of this community, I know that we all do, is aware of the fact that some of these ditches are just simply not functional. And so we're going to have to bite the bullet on this and deal with how we get this under control, particularly with extreme climate now and the extreme rains that we receive. Our drainage systems are more important than ever. So it is it's an excellent report. It tells me far more than I want to know, particularly the money part. But you know what, we need to be able to get a handle on that. So I appreciate the work that's been done by the consultant and staff with respect to this.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I have a few. I had an opportunity to talk to Mr. Walsh earlier today in regards to how we are going to see the increased volume, like what we're currently doing for ditching and what we may find as we're moving forward and implementing this plan. And I understand I'm going to destroy your last name, Tabanovic, was going to comment on that.
Certainly, and through the Bear, Councillor Noyes, that was really close, and anybody even trying is great with that one. I know it's tough. I've lived with it for a long time. But in terms of your question, in terms of what staff capabilities are per year, what we try and do is we plan to have about 2 kilometers worth of ditching per year. So 2,000 meters is sort of the target on a staff level just for the rural area. Again, this is just the rural ditching master plan. We certainly have urban ditches as well to contend with. So, but I am looking back at what we were able to achieve last year, and it's probably more in the line of just about 1 kilometer or so of ditching that was actually achieved back in 2019. And that really is a function of, staff going towards where the concerns are from a customer service perspective. So where we get calls and complaints, we try to prioritize those calls and complaints in regards to our work plans. And the work plans is basically dictated based on the request coming in where we would allocate the resources based on priority. And then what this plan does for us now, though, is look at everything holistically and basically give us a 10-year roadmap to get us back into a good position. Because right now we're way behind. We have about $4 million worth of work outstanding to be done over the course of 10 years. So this gives us the roadmap to get there. And once we're there, the financial burden to the town would be reduced.
Thank you for that explanation. In regards to the report, it talks about that the way they're ditching is going to be different. Like right now, I think we they mow the sides, but with this recommendation, and this is that they're going to mow it the ditches are going to be mowed quite differently. I wonder if you want to explain that.
And through the mayor to the councillor, you're absolutely right. So one of the recommendations in the report, it's good that you caught that one, is that there is a recommendation that we actually get the backside of the ditches as well. And that's really to ensure that in the long term that we're not dealing with this issue another 10 years down the road for future council or councils to deal with, and that we're dealing with things as we need to. And to that point, we've added an item in the capital program for the 2021 budget for a flail arm to attach to the tractor that we use for performing that roadside mowing, so that we would jump into getting that kind of work underway in 2021, and it's in line with the recommendations of the report.
Thank you again for that explanation. One further question. Is there going to be some coordination with the ditches that are being done based on the report, but also with the municipal drains that are being cleared out? I know that when we were talking about municipal drains several months ago, we talked, for instance, the Glennie drain. That's hopefully going to be coming down in the next year or two. Is there any coordination with the ditching that connects to the Glennie drain? Would that come into play with this? Because I didn't see in the recommendations any tie into the municipal drain work.
Right. And again, through the councillor, you're correct. The municipal drains were not part of this exercise. They are a separate entity in themselves. And the timing and the maintenance on those is in a different group within a different group's purview in terms of maintenance. So what we did do, though, is we did survey all of that information related to the drains in terms of the outlets, for where the ditches outlet into the drains to make sure that we coordinate in terms of efficiency of the conveyance system to make sure that we're conveying stormwater appropriately and to an appropriate outlet and to the correct elevation. So there is that continuity there, but in terms of the actual drains themselves, they operate in and of themselves in terms of their maintenance schedules and plans.
Thank you very much. Any other, and it was an excellent report.
Thank you.
Very impressed with that report and all the work that went into it. I can understand the time that it took because of the detail that it provides. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the report? The report carries. That brings us to new business inquiries. Are there any new business inquiries? Seeing none, that brings us to the business status report. Any questions on the business status report? Seeing none, infrastructure services is now closed, and I'll turn the chair back to Mayor Redekop.
Very much, Councillor Noyes, and that takes us to corporate and community services. Councillor McDermott.
Thank you, Worship. Corporate and Community Services is now in session. We have no presentations and delegations. We have no reports this evening. Are there any new business inquiries? Okay, seeing none. Anything on the business status report? Seeing none, we'll throw it right back to you, Your Worship.
Very good, Councillor McDermott. I thought you were trying to drag that out a bit. But I will, you know what, I will let this meeting go then to scheduling of meetings. Are there any meetings that anyone wishes to announce? And if not, is there any, would someone like to move that we adjourn? Councillor Dubanow. So we have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you very much, everyone. Good night.